Hi all. Today I'm bringing you an episode that's really touching and really amazing. It tells the story of a real challenge that led to something really great for a great organisation, a very large organisation. And it's amazing to know the journey and see the journey and the part that Mr. Rob Telford played in this. To help with learnings from this podcast, one of the key topics we're going to talk about is really leading from the front and understanding at the front. And to get extra information on this and help, you can go to the enterpriseexcellencepodcast.com downloads to get hold of the Leading from the Front template, which we call LEAD. And this can really help you into the future. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Podcast, where we aim to help create a better future. Learn from our world's experts how to improve and create enduring, high-performance, low-impact enterprises. Learn how to enhance morale, customer and purpose centricity, focus and calmness. Learn how to create and sustain a culture of excellence at all levels of your organisation.
I'm your host, Brad Jevons, coming to you from Brisbane, Australia. Welcome to episode 156 of the Enterprise Excellence Podcast. It is such a pleasure to have Mr. Rob Telford on the show with us today. I came across the work Rob did culturally within BHP on one of my BHP Operating Systems Assessments, their Yandi site. I was amazed to find a site that lived a number of behaviours that were not even visually shown on walls or documented. They were just part of the language, the culture of the site. I saw work areas that had the most amazing cleanliness and orderliness without markings or visual 5S style structures. I met people passionate about safety, having each other's backs and looking out for their mates without being through extensive training or coaching, again, just part of the culture. Rob also led out the original vision and plan for safety and productivity at BHP, which became what is now known as the BHP Operating System. I'm so excited about this conversation with Rob today, as he played such a large part, including others, in what I saw in that assessment and was amazed by. Let's get into the episode. Rob, thanks so much for joining us today.
Brad, thank you for inviting me on, and it's a great pleasure to be here.
Appreciate it, mate. Appreciate it. Rob, do you mind if we go back to the beginning of it, mate, with Yandi, like that stimulus of it? Like, why did you take a cultural change approach at Yandi that led to these behaviours in this culture that I then saw, years later sustaining?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So you start with easy questions. I'll give you two answers on this, but I'll give you the vulnerability right up. When I actually launched on it, I didn't know that there was another way to do it. This was also my first gig as general manager. So the first time that there was an aggregation of responsibilities that above me and beyond me was leaving me to doing the work. So for me, it was my intuitive way forward. But the second part of that answer as to why was it intuitive to me and why did I do it that way? In the early part of my career, I spent the best part of 5 years working on the front line, both as an underground miner and in the plant. And when I reflect on that experience and what some of the redeeming features, if I have any, as a leader, come from those learnings of working on the front line. And in particular, I was curious about the leadership shadow that was applied to me and what it did to me. So what was the leadership shadow that had me wanting to walk over hot coals for that leader? And what was the leadership shadow that had me going, sure, I'll dial it in, right? I'll give you my obligatory effort, but that's it. That's all you're going to get because I want to get paid. And so on that basis, in my first gig really where I was left to be in control of the way forward, I went with what worked for me.
Yeah, wow. It's a great way to go, Rob. Like, I guess you reflect on that time of yourself as a front line and that leadership shadow that inspired you and then what didn't inspire you. But I guess it's impressive you took the time to just think about that and reflect on that with it. Rob, why would you... Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Brad. You talk about taking that space and why you reflect on that. There is a piece, if you don't go what is, how would you say, aligned with who you are as a person, then you're not authentic. And folks, we've got a radar that's worked for thousands of years, and it used to be there to keep us alive, right? Can I trust this person? Can I trust this environment, or do I have to be on my guard? It still works as well as it always has worked, but now we use it to tell whether we can believe or trust someone or not. And so I don't know that I really had a choice. So I kind of just went with what I believed in. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, it certainly led to amazing outcomes. Rob, at the leadership shadow you mentioned, and I love that language of it, that shadow we cast and the culture we create from it. What were some of the challenges you faced through that journey, Rob, in getting that shadow cast the way you wanted to do? And what were some of the things, the behaviors you did to embed that culture, that culture where everyone's got each other's backs and they have the place looking so clean and precise without being dramatically systemic about it?
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot in that question, Brad. So I'll talk to some of the challenges I faced, and then I'll talk to some of the ways we went about it, and then maybe we can riff on that. But before I go any further, as you said at the start, and I'm glad you added it in, that it was myself and others, right? There are many others that without them playing their part, you wouldn't have what you would have seen at Yandi. There are the spiritual leaders of Yandi, the cultural leaders, and they've scattered throughout the organisation at all levels, right? The docs, the bread mechanics, there's all sorts of them, right? And I'm going to do I'm not going to be able to do it justice to all of those that were part of it. Wade McCulloch was a great one. So I'm just one of many. So please let me get that off my chest and then we'll get into it. So the challenges I faced, first and foremost, the Yandi mine was being run by a contracting organisation when I first came in, HWE, and historically they were left to their own devices, and there was a helicopter parent contract relationship. And so we come back to what's natural and normal to me. I spent all my time in the field getting to know the people, understanding what was going on. So whether I liked it or not, I was not being a helicopter parent. I was getting right in there and understanding and getting to know our people and getting to know the challenges. So that was a filter that I had to work through, that at times the hierarchy of the contracting organisation was causing them grief because I was finding out things before they were. If there's any misalignment between what they were telling us and what was actually going on, I could get awake to that. So I had to work with both the corporate side of the contracting company and the folks on the ground to get outcomes. The second big challenge for us, and a challenge for me in doing the work, was very early on in the journey. We had 2 fatalities.
Oh, well.
We lost Paul, and then within a couple of weeks, we lost Adam. And I was responsible for a couple of mines at that stage, and I'll never forget the moment that I got contacted. In the first instance with Paul, it was midnight, and I was at home and I got the call. And one of the leaders rang, and he was in tears because of such an event that you don't ever want to go through. But what broke my heart was his first words to me was, "I've let you down." And so you ever want to know about the shadow you cast as a leader, never underestimate it, and all leaders do. So the first step was, this person feeling like they'd fallen short of a mark that you wanted them to hold. So they've gone on to a great career and they're a great leader, and you just need to be able to react to what's in front of you, and he did a good job of that. But that was a piece, and I had to get my head around how heavily people were invested in wanting a good future for the company. And then I'll never forget the second, on on the second fatality when Adam was killed, I was flying in from another mine site and I'd made the mistake of not turning my phone off, so it was going berserk in my pocket, and I just had that feeling that something had gone wrong. And I got on the ground and I got off the tarmac and I picked up the phone and they told me that Adam had passed away, and this was his second fatality, and I was sitting there in my car at the airport in Newman and I was thinking, I don't know if I can do this. Right? And for that split second, I contemplated that this is too hard. I can't take the people on this journey because people are getting killed, and it's on my watch that this is happening. And then right then and there, it could have all never happened. But then you kind of quickly go to, well, if it's not going to be me, who is it going to be? Because someone needs to be there. And you kind of just flip. Yeah. And I went from the space of, I don't know that I can handle this, and the loss, I knew enough about the loss having been there, to going, just this fierce determination that this is all the reason why we need to be there, because this needs to go to a better world, so this can never happen again. And you would almost map it that that was a pivotal point at which we thought, okay, enough. We're going to make this place a great place to be. So, yeah, those are a couple of the early challenges that we need to get our head around.
Rob, I'm glad you chose to drive that car on, mate, and then do what you did over the coming years. Because you look at the history of Yandi, it's been unbelievable, since. But boy, that was a dark hour, mate, that you had to start in there.
Yeah, there's a 2-hour drive from Newman to Yandi, and our great emergency response coordinator, he said, you're going to be in all sorts of headspaces, I'm going to drive you up there. And about halfway up there, I said, yeah, can we just stop the vehicle? I just need to go for a walk. So I was just getting my head together. How was I going to show up for this, right? So there's a number of micro steps along the way. You go left, you go right, it can make a big difference. But anyway, so we got there.
Yeah, wow. It's amazing, from such tragedy that often something so amazing can be formed. Like, Rob, how did you go about it then, mate? Like, you're at the lowest of your low there with those 2 fatalities. How did you then go to create what you created with the team after that?
So the world gets quite simple. There's some things that really matter and everything else doesn't matter as much. And so what mattered in that instant was, just can't happen again. So all we need to focus on right here, right now, is what do we need to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And there was a macro environment swirling around, which helped, right? Which was, I had great support from the senior leadership of the company, and so I could do what I thought I needed to do, and now more than ever we need to be in contact with the teams on the ground and working with them and understanding where they were at. And it's interesting, in the months after the fatalities, as we started to go, okay, let's truly understand how things are going at the moment, what's going on, that one of the things that is a principle of belief I have was reaffirmed for me is, no one knows more about the job than the person that does it 12 hours a day. Yeah. And in spending just time, hours and hours walking the site and talking with the team, they were telling me, Rob, it's sad and it's tragic losing Paul and Adam. And that can never be undone, but mate, the big risks are still at large and still in play. And here's what they are. So it got even worse again, that, oh my God, out there was the more likely things that were going to kill us, and they were still not in control. Now, in and along that path, ultimately, some of the things simplified for me. We actually bought the contracting company. We got the opportunity to do that. So then all of a sudden, there wasn't a filter between myself and the lead team and those folks on the ground, so I could work directly with them. But the first thing you want to know in terms of how to respond as a lead team, etc., is you need to understand the facts. You need to get right to the bottom of it. And to do that, you've got to work with the frontline teams and listen. And it's one of the hardest skills there is proper listening, because it's the one skill we're not taught. We're taught to write, we're taught to read, we're taught to talk. But I don't know how you went in your listening exam, Brad, but I didn't get one. So I've been trying to learn to listen all my life. So I was listening to them and they were telling me, Rob, we are far from in control. There's challenge over here, challenge there. So that was a piece. And then another thing that I tell young leaders and operating teams nowadays, that quite often you will get people coming to you, especially in times of crisis or whatever, angry, against everything that's going on, all the rest of it. And what I talk to them about is typically what you are seeing is probably important allies that don't know they're allies yet, because what you're coming up against is someone who cares and who has energy, right?
Yeah.
So Tom Dorian was an example of that in the early days of Yandi, and there were many others besides, where when you sit and listen to them and then they realise that you're listening and they tell you some of the challenges and issues, and you give them the support, the resource or the space to go after it, and they get to put their care into action. And all of a sudden it's just not you pushing, right? There's others going on. So Cobb was another example of that. People typically care in their workplace, whatever workplace you're in. But for whatever reason. Yeah,
that was an interesting statement, Rob, that, and it's often those vocal people who are being vocal and, have some emotion to it, they can often be disregarded or put down as troublemakers, can't they? But like you say, a lot of that can come from a place of concern and care. And it sounds like by listening deeply and then taking action from that, you're able to create great allies there and great partners to really shift the culture of the site.
Yeah, I leave it for others to say what was the shadow that we cast as leaders on the site that helped it. But from my point of view, there's not a single person in any business or any space that doesn't know something that you don't, right? Now, the fact that they're there speaks to the fact there's something about being there is important to them. And if you take the time to give them the respect to listen carefully, you get the opportunity to learn. And if you can learn, you've got more information, you can be in a better place to make decisions. But if you don't listen, you're the one that loses and misses out. So it's pretty straightforward, but listening can be hard, especially when the person is angry, right?
Yeah.
Because all your defences go up and you've got to push past that to go, what's this really about? So anyway.
And Rob, with that, you took that time to really learn and understand, mate, engage the front line and even engage these vocal people who are quite emotive and really driven, and you showed them respect and you learned. Mate, what was the next step to start to channel in on these? Like I heard it and saw it as the mantras that are then spoken about in the culture, mate. Like there were some clear mantras there. What was it then took you from this learning place to then this place where what I saw is every employee in the whole place could say, we're all mates, we've got each other's backs. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept. These just cultural pieces that obviously played a part in shifting the culture forward. So
let's go to there's two different spaces there that I think speak to some of the things that you have seen. And I'll say two things here. One, the culture of care, I could already see when I got there. It might have been smaller than it is now today, but it was there. And typically, and again, I would say it, Brad, it exists everywhere, but some places it's just stifled to the point that it's gone underground and you can't see it. That's one. And then two, the people that have come after me have done their bit to grow it and build it. But anyway, so for what it's worth, what we did on the journey there was because we'd come out of losing Paul, and that was tragic, and then so quickly to lose Adam. Everything else just got deprioritised way down the list below everyone getting home safe at the end of the shift, right? It was so super clear. And we'll talk productivity down the track, but I'll give you a reflection of why I ended up doing boss with that. But so what it was 1,000 conversations in the field with 1,000 people that led to 1,000 micro decisions that always put the person first, right? And then, like I say to leaders, there is not a single conversation you have in any workplace that you can't meaningfully and with authenticity connect it to the important priority, right? And because the priority was getting everyone home with it at the end of the shift without a scratch, every conversation I had would lead to that place, and then I would look for the opportunity to either encourage that person to make a decision that would be nice and clear, or I would see one that I could take, and then I would make it super clear that that was the decision we were making. And so building that groundswell of it's actually really simple at the moment, right? Let's make those calls. And why are we making those calls? Because as much as we love to do work, there's bigger things in life, family, whoever it is that is our family, and then sometimes it's blood family, and sometimes it's friends, and sometimes it's your dog, whatever it is, but work is just a job. And there are bigger things at stake. So I think being consistent and constant with everything you do and say, and I had one example where it played back to me. There was a young, smart professional we had in the team who told me the story of they were a bit sceptical, but then one night they said they were back in camp and they knew I couldn't see them because they were in the shadows of a tree or whatever. They're walking back from the wet mess, but they saw me park in the parking lot. And we've told people you've got to walk a certain way to get through the car park so you don't get run over by someone driving through, and it's not straight, so you've got to take a bit of a detour to follow that. And they watched me walk that path, even though, I could have maybe taken a shortcut, and you couldn't argue that anyone was watching. And the person came to me the next day and said, that's when I stopped not believing, is when you did it when you didn't think anyone was watching. Now, I can't take credit for that. I'm a person of habit, and I'm also a person of if I ask someone else to do something, if I can't do it myself, that's not okay. So I really didn't feel like I had a choice, but it allowed this person to buy in, to go, this person means what they're doing, so I'm in. So, yeah.
That's awesome, Rob. So really what you're saying there, mate, I love the conversation on having a million, thousands of conversations with thousands of people. And I guess that's where those cultural mantras and sayings started to stem from. But also, mate, then your behavior as a leader, that shadow of your behavior, what people saw when they knew that you didn't know that people were seeing it.
I find that it comes back to the point about the radar, and it works really well. Make sure you mean it, right? And if you mean it, apply it with everything you have, right? And understanding that a leader's power is their shadow and how it's cast. That means whether you know it or not, with everything you do and everything you say, that shadow is being cast, make it work for you.
Yeah. Rob, I heard a folklore tale or a tale about one of your behaviours also from a team member saying that, at one stage you saw that the site was getting a bit out of control. Some things weren't quite right. Some things weren't in the place and you're losing some of the control of the structure on where things are placed and the layout. And I heard a tale said that you stopped the whole operation too to say, we got to get this back under control. Is that true, or is that a story that has just driven by your behaviours?
I actually did it. I've done it 4 or 5 times in my career, but in this particular, I've never done it with a mine that runs as, because at the time Yandi was the biggest single operating mine in the world in terms of iron ore output at, ridiculous dollars per tonne. But I'd gone out, we went out to talk to the mining crew at shift change. I'll never forget it. And I'd gone with the superintendent, and we're driving out to the shift change hut, and we're going through the haul roads. And Adam, sadly, we lost Adam where he was in a live vehicle that went under the wheels of a 785 truck, right? So mine traffic was important to us, and we went through an intersection, and on my left-hand side, we saw a truck that had to come to a pretty abrupt halt as we went through the intersection. So it was 20, 30 metres away, but it was a near miss, right? That truck shouldn't have had to brake like it did. We should have seen it and we should have stopped. But the superintendent kept going. I said, hang on a minute. I said, why haven't we stopped here? Well, because we shouldn't have gone through the intersection. The truck had to do something to stop, it coming through the intersection. That's not okay. And the superintendent, you could see visibly there was a tension with the superintendent of, I know that was the right thing to do, Rob, but I need to get you to the shift start, right? And I'm stuck now because you've called it out, and what I saw was, it wasn't clear to me what was the right thing to do, right? So I went to the shift control room, and there were some miners around the place. I got a couple of other signals that told me we were starting to trade off what was the right thing to do. And I'm not proud of it. But I got really upset, and I used some expletives, but I said, I want the whole mine to stop. And so, where the expletives came from was because the person took it, okay, we'll shut the pit crews. And I said, no, I want the whole bleep mine to shut, all the plants. I want the camp to shut. I want everyone to shut down because I want to talk to everyone. And so we ended up with about, 600 or 700 people back in camp, and the whole place is shut down. And that's not an easy thing to do for an operating mine. And we had everyone on the grass, and I talked about some of the leaders of the site that are not leaders, but there are leaders in every crew and all the rest of it. And a number of them were sitting at the back, right? Because they going, yeah, okay, we're about to get chewed out here because we've done the wrong thing. And I just reflected a bit. And then I reflected on some of the things I was doing. And so I got up and said, site admin are just the most incredible people on the planet. So they had a microphone so everyone could hear me, and they'd sort it all out. And I said, and the first thing I think I said was, I'm really sorry, but we've been leading you the wrong way. So we need to fix this, because from our leadership, we're making calls like this, right? That's not okay. So first thing, sorry, that's on me. The leadership, we're going to get together and we're going to work out how to lead you a better way. And then we'll start up again. And so I didn't know until later on, but it was at that point some of the spiritual leaders of the place, of the crew, started to actually listen, because they know that's the case, right? Everything flows from leadership from that regard. So I got with the leaders on site in a room, and I said, you need to go away with your teams, and I need you to go and have a look at your workplace again. And you need to look at it through a different lens. You need to look at it in the lens that where we started this journey on, which is about making sure everyone got home and they're at scratch. And then you need to fix the things. And when you think you're ready, you come back to me and you tell me you're ready to go. And they asked me, so well, what's the deadline? I said, when you think you're ready, not beforehand.
Yeah.
Some crews started up within 12 hours because I was happy that they were thinking the right way. But some other crews, if I'm right, it was nearly 2 days.
Mm.
And there was one poor crew that came back, I think it was a second or a third time, and they still didn't get it. And again, it's only 4 or 5 times I've lost my temper. I wasn't disrespectful, but I was thinking of Adam and I was thinking of Paul.
Mm.
And I said, you've got one more chance. You go on, because I would rather have you off this side and not working for me than starting up again at risk.
Mm.
And they were a good 14 hours, I think, before they came back to me. And they got it right this time. But to the immense credit of the organisation, because this happened over a weekend, all I got was, well done, what help do you need? And this is in the days of $200 iron ore, where Yandi was ramping up, right? And we're talking tens and tens of millions of tonnes of iron ore pumping out the door. And all I got was, well done, what help do you need? Right?
Yeah. That's a great leadership shadow from above. And Rob, I know that these stories about yourself and those behaviours are spoken about with such passion still today. And how many years later are we talking?
We're talking 13, 14 years ago, I think, if I do my math, something like that, 12, something around there.
Yeah. Yep.
But at the time, you just, if you ever have the misfortune of dealing with what is irreversible loss and what changes forever family fabric, there's not a lot you wouldn't do to make sure that doesn't happen again. Right? So, yeah, simple worlds. Right?
Yeah. Well, I love it, Rob, because you led with purpose, you led with the true factor, you listened, you learned, you had thousands of conversations, and then you demonstrated with your team behaviors that really resonated and stuck, and behaviors that got a shadow that everyone got on board. And like you and I know now too, that Yandi's been the site that BHP's called on to get extra tons out. Like there is a massive productivity gain that's come out of this, and a flexibility and a capability post this too. And it might be good, mate, if you don't mind, if we chat now a little bit about that.
Yeah.
What's happened there and that lead into boss that's then been a key part of your career.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's, I suppose, a couple of stories. You talked about the ongoing, how the place is kept in terms of how it's looked after. I can remember very early on going down into the Eastern Truck Workshop with the manager, and the manager wanted to be invested in, running out of space, running out of everything, and the place was a tip, right? And what I talked to the manager and the lead team about was, you have no respect for the environment you've got. Why would I invest in you, right, and give you more? Show me your respect for your workplace, and then let's talk. Now, what was the basis for that was a story very early on. So when I'm working underground, I'm a nipper, right? I'm the lowest on the crew. I just started underground, and so much to learn. And I'm sitting in the crib room with the jumbo operator, and the jumbo operator's like the digger operators. They're God on shift, right? They know everything. And I'm sitting there with them, a guy by the name of Rod Kneebone, and he taught me a lot. He's passed away now, has been for a while, but redeeming features as a leader, a number of them came from him. He said, we're in the crib room and it's the day before it's getting cleaned, so it's actually a pigsty. And Rod says, watch this. And he pointed to a bogger operator who had a cup of tea. And the bogger operator, a guy by the name of Pat, he's sitting there, he's jiggling his tea bag. And he goes, watch this. He pulls the tea bag out, he looks around, and he throws the tea bag on the floor, right? Next day, we're back in the crib room and it's now been cleaned, right? So it's looking good again. Pat's up there with a cup of tea. Rod says, watch this. Gets his tea bag, he's jiggling it, he pulls it out. He looks around the crib room, he looks at the floor, and then he looks for the bin. And he goes and puts the tea bag in the bin.
Yeah.
He said, you will reflect your work environment.
Mm.
If it is smick, if it is looking good, you will try to think smick and try to think well and try to be sharp. It reflects you, you reflect it. And so wherever I went in Yandi, one of the first things I would look to do is to make sure we had a chance to be good, right? So when things weren't in a good space, deal with the safety first, nice clear priority, everyone knew that, don't even think about going anywhere else till we do that. And after we do that, is our place shipshape?
Mm.
And just drive it, because once those two things are in order, good things come. So it was pretty simple.
Well, Rob, that shadow's still that shadow's still there 13 years later, mate. Like when I was there, you could have eaten off of any surface. You could open any drawer of any cabinet and everything was exactly in its place.
What that does mean, though, is as a leader, quite often the back of my vehicle was full of crap, because how can I get people to do it if I won't do it? So we drive down the Hall Road, hang on, let me grab that witch's hat, let me grab this. Comes back to, if you're going to ask other people to do it, you must be prepared to do it. So to this day, some folks will see me walking through the gates here in the building in Perth, and if someone's dropped a tissue, I'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Right, because if you're not going to do it, who will? So those things, again, constant, consistent, and with purpose. And yeah,
it's neat. It's powerful. And I know just from that environmental bit, like you said, the attitude that comes from that, and then also, but the productivity gains that come from that. Like,
so you get safety into a good place. You get the workplace looking good, and so that you can see things. And then we come back to the point I talked about at the start, which is no one knows more about the job than the person that does it 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And if the big things are taken care of and they understand the context of why we're operating, then you ask them, and I typically do this to this day with field leadership when I go out there and I talk with folks. Once we're done dealing with the safety aspect or whatever, then I ask them, okay, you are now in charge of the lot. What's the first thing you would do?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And because I've been a TA to tradespeople, I've done those things where you watch people who are on top of their craft do what they do, and they do it in a way that is light years above the norm. So the upside of productivity is enormous.
Mm.
All you need to do is ask the people that do the job what we need to do, and then to listen properly to what they say, and then to act on what you've listened to and understood, and then value comes from that. And that was my next gig after Yandi, was doing exactly that. So,
yeah, wow, that's impressive, because I guess those employees, they're in it every day. They know the job the most. They know the problems the most.
So I can remember one morning at the Spinifex camp getting breakfast, and a guy comes up to me, an older guy. In the end, I found out he's an ex-farmer, off the land, smell of an oily rag, all the rest of it. But I'd done enough by then for him to go, okay, you're fair dinkum enough. I'm going to talk to you about some stuff. And he came up and he goes, Rob, you got a minute? I said, yep. And I'm really embarrassed to say I can't remember his name, but I can picture him. And he pulls this folded bit of paper out of his pocket. And he goes, I'm one of your truck drivers. We're on the Western One pit. But you need to know that was it the northern ramp or the southern ramp? One of them's got a lump in it. And Rob, the lump in it is such that when we hit it, it drops us down a gear. And I've done the sums on if we could take that lump out, how many more truckloads we would get per day, right? So who can I talk to about getting that lump taken out of the ramp, right? And you go, we've got fantastic people, right? And this was a grubby bit of paper, so obviously he'd gone to a number of people and no one was listening. They thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. This guy seems fair dinkum. Let me try him on. So you can bet your bottom dollar we got rid of that lump, right? Because the other thing I talk to leaders about is the first idea they give you is never their best, but they want to see what you're going to do with it, right? Yeah. So the test is on you, not them. So, yeah, anyway.
And Rob, I know that this journey has then led you to play that part in what's been launched as the BHP Operating System that is about creating 80,000 problem solvers and helping BHP really, build the future of our world and that live its purpose. But I know, Rob, one thing I see with this system that you played a part in, it connects the front line to middle management to executive. So there's a rhythm of execution that any idea, any issue can be dealt with at the right level, front line, wherever it can be dealt with rapidly. Where did all that learning come from then to systemize this whole approach and start to really bring it to life?
So this is where you can never, this is where the power of others helping on the journey comes on this. But so I can remember we were early in sketching out this, what's now BOSS and all the rest of it, and we didn't realise it at the time, but what we're doing is we're trying to work out how we're going to go after this. And what we got that it needed to be passionate, right? You needed to have feeling, and you needed to feel this sense of pursuit, which requires, a cadence and a rhythm. And I'd learned a couple of things in the stuff we'd done in iron ore, where for the first time in 50 years, we ran down Rio in terms of the number one producer from a performance perspective. So there were two things we knew, and two things that I live by. One is no one knows more than the person that does it every day, so you need to empower them. So one of our principles of BOSS is empowering your team, right? Because it's those who have the ideas. They know where the value is. So that's the first one. And the second one is there is always a better way, right? So the pursuit of operating perfection, right? So you put those two pieces together in the context of what you're trying to do, which is to serve the customer, deliver them what they need, not what they want, what they need. Those three things. And on a mine site, for anyone who's worked on a mine site, know there's natural rhythms. And those rhythms is every 12 hours a shift goes by, every 24 hours a day goes by. Each of those are abilities to take steps, right? So use those rhythms to pull the opportunity forward, right? Unleashed by the people that do the work in pursuit of the context of the purpose. All of that. And then the secret sauce in amongst all of that is understanding the big why we're doing things and what your why is attached to that. That gives you access to the discretionary effort of people, which runs 24/7 and is refueling. So yeah, those bits. Then people smarter than me, with more experience than me, codified and built blocks through Tony Ottaviano and a few others. That is now how we do what we do.
Yeah, so it's amazing, Rob. Like I can go to I've been to the maintenance team at Olympic Dam where they go service to service, copper to surface. It's about the truck's not breaking down in the underground mine. That's what we live by, and that's how we serve our customer. And they got the metrics for it, and they drive improvement every day, and it can be escalated. And then you go to, like Dornier, where the site team for water and for roads, it's keep Dornier flowing. We've got to do everything we can to keep this flowing, and that's how we serve it. And they got their metrics linked to that, and they drive improvement, root cause on that. Like, Rob, you must look at what's been created now and what's rolled out, and you must think, yeah, that's neat. That's neat. We codified it. We're rolling it out everywhere.
It's a beautiful thing. the piece where people are connected to purpose, what I always think about, and I talk to young leaders, is at 3 a.m. on Sunday morning when you are asleep, someone needs to make a decision on something. And if they understand the big purpose and why they exist and what their role is, they will make a good call, because no one knows more about the job than that person, but they need to know why they do it. We are probably 20%, 30% of the way to getting to that next horizon of what BOSS can really unlock, but we've got some basics happening, and OD surface, great place to see it. Port, the concentrator at Escondida, you talked about Dornier and some places in coal. It's really starting to catch on in some different places. So I'm super excited about where we're going to be in 5 years.
Yeah, it's impressive. So Rob, mate, we've unpacked some amazing stuff, mate, and just hearing that conversation of your shadow, and thank you for sharing, mate, because, you know, there's a lot of tough stuff there, and there's some the amazing journey forward there. Rob, what would be your 2-minute tip to a leader who wants to transform his or her company to create a better outcome? What would be your 2-minute tip, mate?
Another very simple question, Brad. Jeez.
No, it's a big topic.
So, you got to spend enough time to truly understand the why, the purpose. What are you trying to work here? And typically I find with leaders that they are 2 or 3 levels not low enough solving for what is their true unadulterated purpose. So do not skimp on working out why you're doing what you're doing. And then the second thing is, it needs to align personally to your why. You cannot be an effective leader unless you mean what you say, because if I could speak to any leader that's listening to this, do know this. People can tell when you're being genuine. Just please know that. Please don't ever think that they can't. They can. And when you show up with your genuine shadow, with a real why and a real purpose, and you stay consistent to it, you unlock the potential of people, and that is a sight to behold.
Yeah. Well, I saw that shadow through Yandi, Rob, and that was a sight to behold, mate. Rob, I appreciate, mate, everything you have done and continue to do, mate. And I cherish being part of it in some small way and seeing what's been achieved, and that's been a real highlight in my career, so thank you. And Rob, how can people reach out to you if they want to connect?
Okay, thanks. So Brad, before I do that, listen, for the folks who know me well enough, just do understand that all of the great achievements that are happening and all of that is due to a multitude of people. So I got a bit to play in it, and I was lucky enough to be in the front row for some of these bits. So firstly, if you're going to reach out to me, don't think I'm the centre of it and that I am the solver of all things. I'm not. I've still got a whole heap to learn. But if you do want to chat and do want to talk, and there's been people kind to me on my journey, you can find me on LinkedIn. And then, yeah, happy to chat, because the upside of everyone everywhere, it's incumbent on us as leaders to unlock it.
Yeah, well, you're a champion, Robin. Thank you, mate, for the conversation. It's been a real pleasure for me, and I'll be listening to this one multiple times into my career, I can tell you. So thanks again, mate. Thanks for your time. Cheers, Robin.
No worries, Brad. Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye for now. What a great episode. Remember, you can go to the website enterpriseexcellencepodcast.com/downloads, get hold of the lead from the front template that can help you really explore how to more effectively lead from the front and achieve great cultural change and performance uplift into the future like Rob. So part of the journey, there's a lot more, but this can help. Please feel free to go get hold of it. There were 2 key takeaways for me from this episode. Of course, the first one was leading from the front. The process and the approach that Rob took when things were really bad, to get down to the front, to learn, to understand, to engage, to really work together collaboratively to figure out what we need to do to shift. And oh boy, what did they achieve after that? It was amazing. The second key takeaway for me was leadership behaviours that create the stories that influence culture. You know, I heard these stories of Rob when I was at Yandi, of the time that he stopped the whole site and what he did there to get everyone to look at their behaviours and look at their standards and how well their site's laid out and how safe it is, and he wouldn't start the mine again until that was in place across the whole site. You know, these stories and these behaviours that happen that are really focused on purpose and the vision and what we're trying to achieve and have a real reason to it, they really create a statement that lasts in culture forevermore. I've got many throughout my career that I can think of from other leaders that influenced me and continue to do so. What an amazing story, what an amazing outcome, and I know it continues. You know, Rob is continuing on to help and create better outcomes moving forward, and so does the BHP Operating System that he's a part of creating and putting in place. Thanks again for everything you have done, Rob. Thanks for everything you will continue to do to help us create a better future. Bye for now.